their wisdom, came up with a resolution called, the Security Council came up with a resolution called UN Women Resolution 1325, where they saw a need for women to be partners with men in solving conflicts. However, I don't know whether this is the case in Europe. In the plenary, you may help us understand in Europe, but in Africa, women have been relegated, I guess, to cooking and other things. Because when they are talking peace, even in Sudan, as I speak to you right now, you hardly see women on the table. Why women? Because women are our sisters. Women are our mothers. Women are great leaders. Recently, somebody was telling me with the increasing terrorist attack. Somebody, a friend of mine whom we are passionate with in peace work, she was telling me if all women would stand up and talk to their sons and talk to their daughters, reassure the increasing menace of terrorist attack on peace. But we have not had that opportunity. After Chula, I remember I went back and my first meeting was meeting the women who were affected by the post-election violence. And they were so happy that somebody remembered to meet them. It was so emotional when they were recounting the daughters they underwent, the rape, how they lost their husbands, how they lost their sons through the post-election violence that happened in Kenya that displaced over 600,000 and had about 1,000 people, over 1,000 people made and who died. So it means, as women, we have to sensitize ourselves. Men need to support us in this work of peace. It is not supposed to be a men's only affair. If we all work as partners, we will be able to conquer. We will be able to bring lasting peace in our communities, in our societies, in our villages, in our places of work. So without taking much time, I want to give this time to our three panels, three speakers. And because of time, I'll not read their bio. We will get their bio from page 20, from page 18. So the first speaker is Ms. Angkhana Neelapaijit. You can forgive me for maybe pronouncing wrongly. Who works with the National Human Rights Commissioner of Thailand. She's going to speak on women and peace building in Thailand, challenges and hopes.
Thank you so much, Jane, and good afternoon, everybody. Today I will focus on women and peace building in Thailand. I will tell you in the broad context of conflicts in Thailand and the role of women to engage in the conflicts and the peace process. For more than a decade, Thailand has to weather through one of the most tumultuous storms, particularly in the Deep South, where it has been infested with armed violence for a long time. However, in all areas where conflicts are prone and where confrontation are live among varying parties, we often encounter the scenes in which women have to stand in front of the conflicting parties. There are women government officials or women of the opposition groups. Women have thus been used as a human shield to prevent violence. Gender had thus been used as a tool to mitigate violent conflicts, and it seems normal to do so, despite the women's instrumental role in conflict areas. They failed to garner more leverage and to openly participate in any decision making, any political maneuvering, or peace building efforts. Negative attitude toward the role of women is still looming large in many areas, and their role as a leader intruded. ไม่เดินนะคะ I think it's okay. I will speak very closer. Yeah, thank you. From discussing with women living in conflict areas, I have found that behind the manifestation of violence and conflict lies a number of complicated problems which have been largely ignored and addressed effectively, and women are left at their own devices to face them. Mrs. Chintana Kaukao, leader of the movement against Vernal include power plant, said that women take the helm as leader of movement to protect local resources. We have had standoff with the investor and their colluding government officials. I myself have been ambushed, intimidated, and have been fired with 48 cases altogether, and did my time in jail for 2 months. We want peace. We want to protect the national resources for our children, but we have been found guilty for protecting our community rights. While Ms. Sompong Viengchan, a leader of Pak Dam movement, said that I am fish trader. After the dam, there was no more fish. I started fighting with the village folk that were looked down as if we are not human beings. I was one of the 2 women leaders. With the depletion of resources, women have to suffer more than men. In my opinion, women tend to have less conflict of interest than men. I have to face prosecution in the past 30 years of my struggle. 6 cases have been filed against me. Lately, for being a member of unlawful association, I have been subject to physical abuse, harassment, including sexual harassment. In the midst of tense conflict, women are often placed at the frontier to prevent the arrest by the police. Meanwhile, women belonging to the anti-gold mine movement have said that the government policy to grant permission to operate grand mining has led to an increase of pollution in our community. More people have got sick. Mothers like us have to come out to protect our community and the environment. With the attack of men clad in uniform, we were beaten up and deprived of our liberty. They threatened to rape our girls if we continue to act in defense of them. During the standoff, women have always had to stand in the front line. 6 cases have been filed against us. Fortunately, there has been an increase of awareness about human rights and peace, and we have received more help from rights organizations. This makes it different for women who had been active before us, who received much less support. While Muslim women in Deep South Thailand also share their accounts that women are always placed in the front line in every demonstration to ensure safety of men. But we have hardly been given the chance to make any decision or to have any role regarding legal issues. We are told by men that we are obligated to tend to our families. We have no chance to study and understand the religion's tenet. Our religion's knowledge has mostly been imparted by men. Most women are poor. We have neither home nor property of our own. It makes it even more imperative of us to rely on men. In addition, the Malay Muslim women have been subject to discrimination. We are deprived of access to justice and legal protection. In Thailand conflict zone, women have to bear the brunt, even though they hardly have any role in decision-making, political participation, or participation in peace-building process. It could be said that even though it looks as women have been given the chance to complain or to propose about peace building, but the voices of local women have often been not heard and have borne little influence on policy making on the development of strategies to address the problem. I would like to emphasize the issue of armed violence that has been taking place in southern Thailand and to shed more light on the issues. In Deep South, where armed conflict have been proliferating, women have to face multiple layers of violence, including from the unrest itself and other violence stemming from their gender, and as a result of the use of gender to undermine one's opponent. According to the Justice for Peace Foundation, since 2014 until now, at least 431 women have been killed, and more than 1,000 have injured or become disabilities. In addition, women have to face violence stemming from structural violence, attitude, bias, and dehumanize and degrade their human dignity. The Malay Muslim women are considered in their traditional roles of mothers and wives, and thus policy made for them are designed for such purpose. Empowerment for women is translated into charitable to help them gain more income to support their families. Many women have been abandoned as their husbands, brothers, or fathers are on the run. They stay under close watch of the officials and are subject to inquiries and other pressure to make them leak information concerning the location of their husbands, brothers, or fathers. In some cases, they are taken and held in custody at the military barracks, being forced to disclose the location or information of their family's member who is suspected by the officials. Many of the women have with them very young children, and when being held in the military barracks, they have to bring their children along. As to violence and the Malay Muslim women in the Deep South amidst armed conflict, a number of women have become a tool used for crushing the opponents. We found women have become more and more a target of violence, including rape, forced child marriage, domestic violence, or being victims of human trafficking. Apart from all issues mentioned, it has been found that women in conflict zones in South Thailand have not had any role in the drafting of law concerning women. Most of women's voices have been heard concern a plea for forgiveness and to forget the past violence. No one has given an emphasis on access to justice and restoration of human dignity among women. Of course, peace cannot be realized without forgiveness, but such forgiveness had to come with a guarantee that such violence will not occur again in future, and the perpetrators have to be brought to justice. In order for peace building and social restoration to move forward, women's strength and roles are indispensable, since after they all constitute a half of population. We can see that while most men think only about power sharing, but women's vision of peace includes sustainable livelihoods, education, truth, and reconciliation. So under conflict and violence, when both men and women have equal rights to participate in conflict resolution processes, as an essential component of a robust peace process. Women must be included, and the dimensions of gender recognized that for any process to be democratic and fair, and thus capable of contributing to a sustainable peace, it must include and support both sexes alike. Peace building and post-conflict reconstruction must include women's voices in addressing the root cause of conflict and in transforming institutions, structures, and relationships with a post-conflict society. And if a peace process is framed by value of parity of esteem, a half of population cannot be excluded. History always told us that women experience conflict and violence in a different ways than most men. They also develop unique skill and expertise for resisting, addressing, and preventing conflict. Work on justice and peace cannot afford to neglect constructive contribution of women. I thank you very much.
One thing for sure is that they are never represented at policy level. Apparently, they're the majority of that make up populations in different countries. So those are the challenges that we may go through. Thank you. Actually, you summarized almost everything. I don't have to overemphasize. Thank you for the presentation.
Thank you.
Next, we have Dr. Asma, Shakir, Khawaja.
For generations, women have served as peace educators, both in their families and in their societies. They have proved instrumental in building bridges rather than walls. According to different quantitative studies, women's empowerment and gender equality is associated with peace and stability in a society. Gender equality is one of the most credible measurement to understand how much a society is peaceful or stable. And I will explore this issue further during the course of this presentation. If women are influential in decision making, they take the lead against extremism in their communities. And it is more likely crisis will be resolved without the recourse of violence, because women are good at using soft power to resolve issues peacefully. It is evident that gender equality is a better indicator of a state's peacefulness than other factors. Similarly, gender inequality has been revealed as predictor of armed conflict in numbers of empirical studies. Unfortunately, women are invisible in a conflict or in a society as victims, as survivors, and as decision makers. As I discussed it with some of my friends, that I've been asked to present a paper on the women voices in security policy making with special reference to Pakistan. But the problem with our societies is that their women are still fighting to register their existence in a society. And voices is like is like a big thing for them. First of all, they need to be considered that they exist in a society and they have share on the resources. When it comes to why we need to incorporate women in security policy making, it is important, I thought, to understand that what does peace mean to women and men. And during the research, I found out that peace has different meanings for men and women. For men, as you can read the slide, for men, peace is peace means coercive security, like physical security, military problems with the neighbors. For them, peace doesn't mean their relationship with the women. But for women, peace means human security. Peace means her protection from the violence posed by men or male members of the society. For her, peace means that her children have right to education or access to education. For her, peace means that her family has been satisfied, they are getting food and shelter and other things. So her definition or understanding of peace is more coherent and comprehensive, that may starts from the individual security to the larger spectrum of a state security. But for men, it means in coercive terms. And to my surprise, when I asked Pakistani men, and those were my students, that what does peace mean to them, and most of them narrated their understanding of peace vis-a-vis our neighbors. That peace means that if we are at peace with our neighbors, didn't even come to their mind that peace can be how they are living with the women in the society. But because women are dependent to lead a peaceful life on the male section of the society, so for them it means a equal coexistence with them. I'm just skipping what I have narrated already. Women participation, why women participation is important? Women participation in decision making is important because it breaks the conflict trap. Because women participation adds a perspective, a new perspective in the conflict, which is not about sustaining a conflict, but sustaining peace and resolving a conflict. So that is why women participation breaks the cycle of the conflict. If women have more influence in decisions, it leads to less violence, less extremism, and greater social stability. Why it leads to less extremism? Because in every extremist society or extremist ideology, women are the prime victim of the extremism. What is the first objective of extremist ideology? To chain a women's right to freedom, women's right to choose, women's rights to even to exist. And we can see and we can draw commonalities in different extremist ideologies as how they treat women. There are in various researches, it was suggested that women are often the first to stand up against terrorism, since they are among the first targets of fundamentalism, which restricts their rights and frequently leads to increases in domestic violence before it translates into open armed conflict. But even in this case, women, we find, as my colleague said, that women are absent from peace agreements, from conflict resolution initiatives, and we are talking about that if they are in decision-making level, unfortunately, they are not even at grassroots level exist in peace initiatives or conflict resolution strategies. What if women participate? Women participation is important because peace agreements are 35% more likely to last at least 15 years if women participate in its creation. When a state has a 5% increase in the number of women in parliament, it is 5 times less likely to use violence when faced with an international crisis. When it comes to ending violence, women made up just 2% of mediators and 9% of negotiators. In official peace talks all over the world between 1992 and 2011, these figures are from that decade. Likewise, only 2% of funding dedicated to peace and security is channeled to gender equality and women empowerment. Now I will focus on the context of women participation at decision-making level vis-a-vis Pakistan. It is important to understand, the context that if we want to understand the status or the role of women in decision making today, we need to understand what is the context of that role. The context of that role is, as mentioned in the slide, discriminatory legislation. In Pakistan, law discriminates between men and women. Women have different rights and men have different rights. And most important thing is that women have almost no role in formulating those laws or implementing those laws. There are, as such, to ensure their access to, there is no gender responsive judiciary or police are the areas which are almost out of the bound for women in Pakistan. Our first women Prime Minister, Benazir Bhutto, she introduced exclusive women police stations in order to encourage women to register their complaints against the male members of the society. But even then, it is practically, it is very difficult and close to impossible for a woman, because our society, because it is a closed society, because it is a traditional society, if a woman, it is a general understanding or perception in the society that if a woman complains against a man, she is a bad woman. She is not a good woman, so she cannot protect the honor of the male members of her family, and that is why she is going out and complaining against them. So this tag of bad woman is very hard and difficult to afford in my society, and there are only very few brave women who could afford that tag. These are the statistics, and I will explain them. It would be noteworthy that the exclusion or invisibility of women is rooted in Pakistan's systematic gender disparity. Ranked 141 in the annual Global Gender Gap Report, Pakistan is second to the last in terms of gender equality worldwide. Pakistan ranks 141 for economic participation, 132 in education, 119 for health, and 85 for political empowerment. And these facts makes Pakistan at the bottom of gender equality global ranking. Despite having legislated 33% representation of women in parliament and being the recipient of billions of dollars in development projects focused on gender equity, women in Pakistan still face uphill battle when it comes to inclusion of women in decision making at all levels. Particularly affected is the peace and security sector, where despite women being incorporated into the armed forces, judiciary, police, and foreign service, women rarely rise to the position of power. There are notable exceptions in each field, but they remain exception and not the general norm. To date, Pakistan has not had a female 3-star general. No woman has risen to the rank of foreign secretary or being appointed as a justice of Supreme Court ever in Pakistan. Women's invisibility as victim, survivor, and peacemaker and leaders need to be understood as a first step in addressing the opportunities and obstacles for improving the situation for women. As I said, due to structural reasons knitted in the cultural norms, women in Pakistan are subject to institutionalized discrimination, militant violence, and religious intolerance. Due to different socio-cultural, religious realities, the history of laws affecting women's rights and empowerment in Pakistan involves a complex pattern of advances and setbacks. Here, advances means when there is some exclusive law is being accepted by the parliament to protect women's right, and culturally society rejects that law, and society doesn't accept it as a part of their culture or living, part of their living. Varieties of factors have contributed in marginalized and voiceless position of women in the Pakistani society, and I will very briefly explain it. First of all, the social context. The role and situation of women in Pakistan is a traditional patriarchal society, and in Pakistani society, family is the basic unit which sets the norms for males and females. Within this system, fathers and husbands are recognized as the guardian of women, and the decision-making powers are vested in male hands. Therefore, society has defined their roles. So, a discrimination against female child starts from her conception and continues throughout her life. For example, a female child is comparatively voiceless in home vis-a-vis a male child, and females don't have decision-making power in traditional Pakistani system. So, if they don't have decision-making power in the basic unit of society, which is family, then how they can have decision-making power at state level? So, in order to incorporate them as decision makers at state level, we need to incorporate them at the family level. We need to raise their, and as I have been told that my time is up, so I would be more than happy to answer your questions during the question answer session, and if someone is more interested, he or she can get this copy of my presentation for further. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I think it's so apparent that it is in perceptions. We have different perceptions on what this is all about. So when we come to the negotiating table, we are never at the same mind. We don't have the same mind. We may be there, be seen with the cameras, but apparently the way men perceive peace is totally different from the way women perceive peace. So that is why we don't have major results when women are present, are slightly few in the negotiating table. You're welcome. The next speaker is Dr. Triveni, who will take us through motherhood as a space of protest, a comparative study of two motherist collectives in India's northeast and their role in the ongoing peace process. Thank you.
I'll try to be as brief as possible. So basically, this was a part of my doctoral thesis, and I'll try to just give you a fair idea of what the study entailed. So for purposes of clarity, basically, the presentation would be, first, I'd just give you an overview of the context. The second would be on women and peace building in the region. Third is the emerging themes. So the third and the fourth, I'll just collate and maybe give you something in brief. So if you look at the location, that is India and the northeastern region, as you can say, and the two collectives that I took for the study are basically, they have organized themselves within the framework of motherhood. Not all members of the organizations were mothers themselves, but they just, that's the ideology that they adopted. So Assam and Nagaland, as you can see, the two contiguous, near neighboring states. So I took one organization in Assam and one organization in Nagaland. Demographic-wise, Assam and Nagaland are both different. Assam is a more heterogeneous population, and Nagaland is mostly a Christian state, so the role of the church is very important, and not only in the social lives of the people, but also politically they have a lot of say. Now, the northeastern region of India has seen a lot of conflicts, and in fact, it is in many ways considered to be an insurgency hotspot. 4 out of the 8 states have what is called low-intensity conflict. A lot of these conflicts basically began as non-violent movements for greater autonomy. So the northeastern region has hundreds of ethnic communities, and each ethnic community has, at some point in time, struggled for greater ethnic identity, and one of the ways in which they wanted to consolidate their identity was through a greater autonomy and power that they wanted in their administrative units. So many of these ethnic communities have several armed opposition groups in their name. It's very similar to Myanmar, actually. And in fact, because Nagaland is a contiguous area with Myanmar, they also have a very free movement of insurgents across the border. And so most of these ethnic groups, if you were to look at, now because I'm looking at Assam and Nagaland, Assam's main movement began in 1979 as a students' movement against what they considered was illegal immigrants from neighboring Bangladesh. And the main demand was that these names were included in the electoral polls, and they wanted it removed. But soon it metamorphosed into an armed struggle, which has continued till date. Nagaland, on the other hand, has seen an armed conflict against the colonial powers, and over time there have been many agreements, peace agreements with the government at many points in time. And in fact, there was one in 2015, this year in July, but nothing has really come out of it. Okay. So what we see in, as the other speakers have also talked about, is that in any sort of conflict, women usually are at the very bottom rung, so they are the worst hit. And in the northeastern region, we see that there have been several examples of spontaneous women's initiatives to reduce the impact of conflict. And symbols of mourning and motherhood are often used by women as strategies of protest, and several women's organizations have played an important role in an effort to build peace in the region. But what we do see is that women themselves don't recognize that the initiative that they have taken up as something to do with as a formal peace initiative, because what it often is, there's a term called accidental activism, that because they start working in their communities, maybe a little outside their homes, etc., they themselves don't recognize it as any sort of a formal peace-building initiative. Women's groups in the region have often been seen putting forth the notions of mothers of martyrs, mothers as an embodiment of resistance, of being selfless and nurturing. And what's most important, we have to understand it allows them to garner both emotional as well as political mileage. Because it's usually seen that in any conflict, the state as well as the non-state actors are more reluctant to maybe use force when women present themselves as mothers. Okay, so the two motherist collectives, the Naga Mothers Association was formed in 1984, and they have actually been quite active politically as well as socially. And they have had certain significant achievements. They have done a very famous campaign, which was also recognized pan-Indian, the Shed No Blood campaign. And they've also, it's one of the rare groups that have been able to actually successfully mediate between the government of India and the Naga rebel groups. In fact, I think it was in early 2000, the several rounds of peace talks were held in Bangkok, and they were part of the mediation. The Kasturba Gandhi National Memorial Trust is the second organization that I've taken, and as the name suggests, it was formed with the initiative of Mahatma Gandhi in, this is pre-independence India, and it has a wide network. It's formed on the Gandhian welfarist approach. But my study basically looked at a small organization within Kasturba Gandhi National Memorial Trust, which was formed with the ideology of mothers, called the Assam Matri Manch. And they have also been quite active, but with very little visible presence in the media and also in the minds of the people. Okay, so I don't think I'd really go into the details of the study, but the study was basically a qualitative analysis. I'd looked at 78 respondents. There were 4 categories of respondents, and it included both in-depth personal interviews as well as interview schedules. And I basically looked at, took up the notion of political motherhood as the theoretical framework. And the basic premise of political motherhood is this, that it allows women to use the experience of motherhood for dual purposes, as a political tool to counter resistance as well as a protection against oppression. So I've actually already touched this portion, but if you were to look at the struggles of women in the northeastern region of India, you see that over several conflicts across several decades, women have organized themselves and they have put forth their demands for peace. One of the commonalities, how long? Okay. So basically, although they're quite different in the way they have been structured, both these organizations have adopted nonviolent approaches in their peace-building efforts. And, okay. So maybe I'll just go to the conclusion. So the conclusion, in conclusion, what we found was that women are powerful voices in the moderation of conflict, yet they seldom find representation in the political spaces. One of the recurring themes that had emerged was the essentialist view of motherhood. Most respondents came back saying that yes, women are, they're natural peacemakers and they're nurturing and all that, but there is a critique to it, saying that, you can't, if you just say that all mothers are peaceful and all of that is not really very true, because women have been at the forefront of many aggressive movements all over the world. One very important factor was that although both organizations have been in existence for quite some time, that they have been, they've not really grown in a similar manner. And in that, I found that the church in Nagaland has played a very important role, and it is also, Nagaland has a much more homogeneous population, so they have been able to have one apex body, which has brought different factions together. In Assam, it's a much more heterogeneous community. There have been leadership crises, and so they're not a single voice per se for the thing. And the most important thing is that women are capable of emerging as a reservoir of social capital to overcome threats of social disintegration. But it is important to remember that the importance of sustainable peace, that peace is not a one-off event, and it cannot be brought about by a mere cessation of hostilities. Instead, it is an ongoing process requiring continuous efforts. Thank you.
There's one last presentation that will be played because Professor Miriam, Coronel, could not make it today, so she sent a video which will take like 2 to 3 minutes. So we honor her and play it.
To Akihiko Tanaka-san, President of JICA, Ambassador Melan Vivier, who hosted me last April in Georgetown University for the Hillary Clinton Awards. My warm regards, ma'am. Other distinguished guests, panelists, staff, and officers of JICA. Good day to everyone. Our negotiations with the MILF was primarily intended to restructure the relationship between the Filipino majority and the Bangsamoro people in the South. But it was also duly accompanied by the goal of restructuring the relationship between men and women in the prospective Bangsamoro political entity and the whole country. From the beginning, we in the government panel were conscious that achieving parity of esteem or mutual respect and equal rights between the majority and the minority populations of the country had to be accompanied by the goal of achieving the same parity of esteem between men and women in terms of the process as well as the outcomes. That's why the peace negotiations between the government and the MILF provides an interesting story of how women increasingly became important participants at different levels. First at the state level of the formal process, or what we call Track 1 Peacebuilding, which takes place at the highest level of the states. But the Mindanao peace process is also a developing story on how active political participation is cascading down to the grassroots. It can be said that as the talks progressed, so did the awareness on the part of everyone, the government, the MILF, international and domestic actors, of the need to consciously bring in more women to meaningfully participate in peace building. One effective approach was to create more spaces, to put more seats inside the negotiating room. This enabled more women, especially on the MILF side, to join the formal talks. Through consultants, observers, and technical working groups, we saw the number of women blossom inside the negotiating room. We have now brought in more women to join the various mechanisms for implementation of the different aspects of the comprehensive agreement on the Bangsamoro, especially the last item on the Annex on Normalization. This process of bringing in more women has been slow, but it has become irreversible. 3 out of 6 government signatories to the comprehensive agreement on the Bangsamoro are women, with myself as the chair. The MILF panel was all men. In all, just 3 of the 12 signatories were women. Still, it was a big leap. Nearly all past negotiations were exclusively done by men. One ambassador to the ASEAN asked me this question at a forum organized by the ASEAN Institute for Peace and Reconciliation last April. What is the hardest thing about being a woman in the negotiations? What, on the other hand, is the best thing about being a woman in the talks? Let me start with the advantage of being a female negotiator, and that is how other women, community women, women of the MILF, teachers, and other women leaders easily approach me, tell their stories, or explain the context to me in forums, consultations, and field visits. Their stories and insights have provided me with a much clearer picture of the situation and how we can overcome problems. Without their input, how can we complete the picture? How can we get to that agreement that we achieve with very clear provisions that will promote women's civil, political, economic, and social rights? As for the hardest thing about being a woman negotiator and peace builder, this is none other than the biases and prejudices against women that persist. As a woman in public life, one gets tested two ways. First, against men. Second, against other women. You not only have to prove that you can be as good as other men, you also have to measure up to the standards of the best women who came before you, the pioneers, the mothers of pearl in the long struggle for women's rights. In other words, the ceiling gets higher each time and you cannot fall short. Worse, a woman in public office would have to contend with sexism, which can manifest itself in a most hostile and threatening way, especially in the unregulated world of social media. Despite all the societal barriers, women themselves must believe in the art of the possible. The successful out
Yeah, we had to cut it short because we want to give room to the plenary. You will get this through. We'll request the Rotary Peace team to send it to all of us and all the presentations that have been made. Now we open the floor for questions to our speakers. We'll take the first three. They will be able to answer before we proceed. Anybody who has questions for the presenters? Seeking clarity.
I think I just wanted to make a comment and say that this is just so exciting. It's not exciting in the sense, but the progress that people are doing behind this kind of work in such diverse countries.
Yeah, thank you, Lily.
Okay, may I ask something about the Security Council Resolution 1925? Because I'm working in a peacekeeping operation in South Sudan, and I would like to share my experience. Because I have to work with IDP, internally displaced person, and I could say that as a women in uniform, and after 10 years, after the UN resolution 1925 has been came to effect, I could say that I can see the great number, like the increased number of the women in uniform to work in a peacekeeping operation. Because I can say that women do a better job than men. Sorry for that. But it's actually because we can bring the voiceless to be heard, because we know what women want, and we know at our motherhood, and many of you may be a mother, you know what is the best for you. And I'm so happy that in my mission, Women's Mission, United Nations Mission in South Sudan, we continue to increase the number of women in uniform. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your contribution.
Thank you for your contribution. We appreciate. Benson?
Role of women in peace building and also in women's overall empowerment. Women's participation in policy making body and constitution making body, legal bodies is very vital. I can tell you the case from Nepal. So, according to the new constitution, we have recently passed the new constitution. And we had an interim constitution for maybe 8 years after the decade-long violent conflict in Nepal. So the constitution had a provision that at least 1/3 of the parliament members should be from the women, at least. Though women have the more than 50% share in the population demography, and we had that provision. You see, because of that provision, so now we have the female president, first time in the history, and the Speaker of the House is a female. And we have a provision that the president and vice president should be, one of them should be female. And the speaker and the deputy speaker, one of them should be female. And there are some other provisions which are very encouraging and in favor of ensuring the rights of the women, the political, the economic, and many other rights. So I think this is very important, for all of us to ensure and to strongly advocate in favor of representing, for increased representation of the women in the policy making and the law making bodies, I think. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Imtiaz Muqbil. I'm a local journalist. I'd just like to follow up on Dr. Triveni's comments about sometimes women being associated with intense acts of aggression as well. That's a very accurate comment, actually, because if one looks at the history of women prime ministers, Golda Meir, Indira Gandhi, Margaret Thatcher, they've been associated with quite a lot of wars and emergencies and all kinds of stuff. Does that actually damage your credibility when you actually discuss the role of women in peace building? Because it would be nice to have more women leaders who have actually produced peace, genuine peace on the ground, rather than, I don't see any role models at that level where you can use as an example and say, okay, yes, you had a women leader, and then as a result of that woman leader, she negotiated a positive peace between countries, communities, and others. Whereas actually, I'm being a little bit contrary, but it's in line with your own very astute observation. And I just wondered if you and Dr. Asma and maybe even Kun Angkhana would have any comments on that.
In my presentation, those women leaders whom you talked about, they are exceptions. And see, there are so many, like even if we take those numbers as an indicator, number of women who were the head of the states and they were more aggressive, but there are like list of hundreds of men who contributed the worst genocides and massacres in the history of mankind. They led it. See, so this is not the issue that if one name is blinking or two names are there. The problem is with the 99.9% women who are suffering from those issues. And yes, you are right, women in certain circumstances, women can be aggressive, but what I discussed was a quantitative measurement of the possibilities and probability. And those measurements have been published by credible think tanks. So these are the credible scientific studies. And they say that women, comparatively, women are more peaceful or maybe. And this is what exactly, as you mentioned, we were discussing, that why women are not there as leaders or as a peace builder or peacemakers. This is the issue, that they are not there.
I do think there are exceptions of women see, in the context of Nagaland and Assam, we see that most of these peace builders or peacemakers, even as mothers, have not been included in formal peace processes, except for NMA, which is it's like a rarity almost. But you know, there's one thing that I wanted to touch upon, which was part of the study, was there was a question on whether women who use motherhood, or even these mothers, are pawns in the hands of non-state actors as well as the state. And most of the respondents, in fact, the majority said yes, they are. That they often are used by the state, and that was a critique which came from the people also, because they were criticized, and they were said that, you know, although they are very, they have the potential to be, you know, very powerful social actors, they often get swayed by emotions. And the state has also been criticized for using them, but the majority of the respondents leaned towards the use of these mother activists by the non-state actors, because I think when the sons, as in the rebels, would often, while approaching these motherist collectives, would portray themselves as sons who had gone astray, and that sort of an emotive appeal would often change the very discourse of the political claims that were being made. So yes, I think women have been found to be aggressive, but in these contexts, both Assam and Nagaland, these women have been doing a lot of work at the grassroots. It's just that they're not as visible political entities as they should be. Thanks.
Thank you.
Yes, the same question, right? Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. I think that women and men, they face the same problem, but their attitude, their opinion, and how solving the problem is different. From my experiences, I think that the most important is about the political will, and if we want to encourage women to have more women leaders, I think we have to empower women. I think that women can use their own experiences to solve the problem. You know that in the conflict area, especially in Thailand, we often found, as I said, that women will be in the front between the police and the protester. So that it's like that sometimes you want to get benefit from women. So you use women to be in the front, to be like the leader. But after that, when you have negotiation, when you want to make peace or have the last solution, there will be no more women on the table. So that's the problem. I think that women know many things very well, especially what happened on the ground. And if they have opportunity to be on the table, they can bring the problem from the ground onto the table and to solve the problem. My experience working in South Thailand, I think recently we have, it's just last week, but it happened quite a long time ago. You know that when the man in the family, husband, father, or son ran away, they might got the violence or whatever, but left women and children behind in the houses. And then you know that many times the police or the soldier visit the houses and asking, where's your husband? And then when women say, I don't know. So how can you have children while your husband ran away? And they took the DNA of the children to prove that those children belong to the man who ran away. So I think this is very stupid, and they not respect the rights of the child. So when we want to make peace and we want to have sustainable peace, I think we have to respect to all people, and especially women who actually run the society and the community. Yeah.
Thank you. My name is Demetria, and I live in Germany. And I was thinking too that we need a lot more women in leadership positions who are in a position as well to influence the organizational culture and the mandates of the organizations they're in. And we need them in a critical mass. It doesn't help to be one woman amongst 300 men. A lot more has to happen there. Also in the way of institutional change, making institutions more peaceful, or implementing or making peaceful transformation a key mandate in those organizations. And I mentioned the fact that I'm from Germany simply because the current Minister of Defense is a woman. And she was formerly the family minister. So when she took over the position of being the Minister of Defense, a lot of men were saying, well, she's going to make the military more family friendly. We're like, great, what's wrong with that? Germany is having some difficulty recruiting women into their ranks, and so maybe they do need to think about whether or not they should be more family friendly. At any rate, this woman, as Minister of Defense, also has a mandate, amongst other things, to maintain the military structures and traditions of the organizations she's taken over. She doesn't have an explicit peace mandate. So we'll see what happens. But ultimately, again, I don't think it's necessarily enough, again, to have women in certain positions. And it's not enough to have just a handful of them embedded in a culture that is not open to change in a positive way. And so I think it needs to work from both levels, again, making change in a more peaceful, positive sense a key mandate. And only then can women also be more effective in their positions as leaders of these organizations.
Thank you. Maybe adding on the comments, I would like to hear from the panelists in their opinion, because we know a lot of research or a lot of facts that women are, it's capable, and they could make peace, and they are doing a lot of stuff, and they are the front runner in terms of conflict and when dealing with the police. I think the same thing in Burma. We have a lot of women who are very strong and famous and lead the change. But if you look at the peace process, also we have little, none at all. So, in your opinion, how do we make we're talking about women, but how do we make them? We make the parties who are in the negotiation table to have women involved in to be a negotiator, to be on the table from the beginning, because a lot of time women will be told it's not the right time yet or not the time yet, but then after some time, then you are left out of the process, as that you're not in there anymore. So I would like to hear from you, because we have UN Security Resolution 1325, we have the CEDAW, and the government are ratify, whether they have a platform for action or not. But in this kind of country, we still see a lack of women in the peace process. So what are your opinions? Thank you.
Thank you. We'll have each presenter give their opinion.
Yeah. I'm not sure that I can reply your questions, but I can tell you that there's a lot of barriers for women, especially for Thai women. Even though we ratified the CEDAW for more than 30 years, and we saw the Ministry of Human Security and Social Development often talk about 1325. But we have the gender equality law that was passed by the parliament recently, just last September. In the gender equality law, is allowed to discriminate in regarding to the reason of religious reason, public good reason, and national security reason. So we don't know what the definition, for example, what the definition of national security reason that allow discrimination. So you know that even though our Prime Minister went to New York at the UN, had very good speech on gender equality, but when he back to the country, in the reforming council, we have only 17 women from 200 people. So that I think it's still long way struggle for women to participate in the policy making. Yeah.
So I'm not very sure if I can answer the question directly, but you know, the thing is that women are required to be at the peace table, and maybe I think the critics often say that it's sheer tokenism, that you know it's just one woman in the thing. But you know, even if that lady is not really contributing much to the entire process, it still provides visibility. And it's very important because women, as the other speakers have also said, they experience conflict differently. So her experience of what the conflict means to her or means to her family or the village or the community would be perhaps different from what the men bring to the table. So it perhaps would require a lot more work than what is actually taking place now. But I think even if it's initially just if a woman is just is like a almost token member, so to say, and it's very crass, but I think it's important to bring them in.
I would like to quote a small story or event. Like Pakistan also suffers with the issue of internally displaced people, IDPs, because of military operations in some of the conflict-affected ridden areas. And while when military plans an operation in a specific area, they vacate civilians from that area and resettle them in a different area for some small period of time, so that they can the military can conduct a military operation in the conflict-ridden area. So whenever they plan how to relocate IDPs, as women is not in policy making, they are not planning the relocation or anything. So concerns of women IDPs, female IDPs, were never been addressed in any IDP resettling plan. And the weather in Pakistan is quite warm, and in those areas is quite warm. And because of traditions, women, they can't go outside their home, so they are homebound, especially in those IDP, in those areas. And no male member of the committees, they ever thought that how a woman would survive in a 6x4 tent without electricity 24/7, like for several months, and how she will use the washrooms, and above all, how she will deal with the issues of like several issues which are only related to women, like periods. No one ever thought about it, that how they were providing them food, they were providing them shelter, but rest all the issues were not taken care of, because there was, if I think that if a woman would be in decision making, maybe she would be able to bring those issues on table and ask the officials to take care of those aspects of women relocations as well. And those women, I went to those IDP camps, and the women were miserable, like they were sweating, it was heat, they were suffering from fever and other illnesses, but they were not allowed by their men, so that a male doctor can see them and cure them from their problems. And female doctors were not ready to go to that camps because there are radical men there with big beards, and they didn't want to interact with them as well. So, please.
One last parting shot. Are women relevant in peace building or not?
Women are, that is why I quoted this one small example, that women are very relevant with the peace building, so that they can give a women perspective about resolving issues and about dealing with the sustainable peace building. And this is, their participation is not like relevant, it should be pertinent. It should be there. And this is again quite embarrassing that today we are discussing that women should participate. We never discussed that men should participate in that thing. So like men's participation is understood phenomena, I wish that this world would learn that women participation is also an understood phenomena. So maybe next time we can talk about other species that they should participate in something, but not women. Not women.
We'll give you a room later.
So yes, I think the most relevant thing would be to say that women as mother activists, or even as activists in general, have a huge potential to emerge as a reservoir of social capital, to overcome threats of social disintegration, because the kind of work they bring in with their experience is often, as Asma also pointed out, might not necessarily fall within the policies that are implemented as formal peace building initiatives. So I think they have the potential, and really I think it is up to the state as well as the non-state actors to really tap into the potential, to see that they bring in their the things, and they start working.
I just want to emphasize that when we talk about women, we should think that it means that all women, police women, women soldiers, women as a mother, wife, or even though the women as the religious leader also. And so that I think that the attitude and the skill as women, I believe that if they can take care of their children in the home, so that they can move on to support their community and their country as well. So that's why we talk about women in the peace building. And the most important is post-conflict. What is the role of women in the post-conflict? If women have no role during the conflict, and after post-conflict, I think that many things may be changes, and we don't know that what will happen to women, especially for the crime against women, the violence against women that happened in the post-conflict, and we don't know what will happen for our new generation. I thank you.
Yeah, thank you. My sister, I'll give you time, but I'm just winding up because of the session is coming to a close. You can ask the question maybe after a minute or so when I close. I just want to say one thing that is so clear is that women play a vital role in peace building. We cannot assume or wish them away. They're important part and parcel of the community, but apparently in decision making, they're always never there. One thing I've done in my organization in Kenya, wherever I'm organizing for a workshop or a meeting where I have influence, I make sure I insist on equal number of women and men being represented there. That is my own small way or simple way of contributing. Because if I were to be a politician, maybe I'll not be one. I was not called to be a politician. But in your own small way, in that organization, in that institution, you can make sure that any meeting that is called upon, that you insist or you raise your voice that women need to be represented. And much more, it's not about the numbers, but as our sister said, it's quality. You can have many women, but if they're not empowered to come up with tangible solutions or tangible policy decisions, then it will just be like any other meeting. So a way forward is that in our own little ways, in our institutions, in our organizations, we endeavor to continue with this peace building by encouraging concerted effort, not only from women, but to encourage men. Recently, I was in a very rural area, and I was encouraging men to marshal support for women. In our constitution in Kenya, it provides a 2/3 gender rule, but we've broken it. It's the supreme law of the country, but women are not yet 2/3. Actually, the parliament is unconstitutionally, constituted. But nobody is talking about it. So I was mobilizing women in the rural areas and a few other voices to come up, asking men to support us, to say that this decision, we need to follow what the supreme law of the country says. And I was asking men to support us. It is a concerted effort by the youth, by the women. It's every one of us. Peace building does not stop at Chulalongkorn University or any other Rotary Peace Center, but it is a continuous process. Let's do it with zeal. Let's do enjoying it, because it has to be. The process has to continue for us to see a peaceful, or to live in a peaceful world. How I wish the whole world would be discussing peace the way we are discussing right now. The world would be a better place to stay. Thank you very much for this session.
I'm sorry about this. I know you probably all want to go. And you've just basically answered the question that I was getting at. How do we make sure that women, or how do we come up with sustainable solutions to make sure that women not only get into power, but stay into power, and that there are avenues open to them once particular individual leaders as women are gone? And things like quotas, do we need them? Do we need institutional measures? Do we need women who are always willing to mentor other women to make sure that they bring others along, and that kind of thing? I would have liked to have heard a little bit more from you about this kind of sustainable representation of women in organizations. But again, I think you wrapped up beautifully.
Yeah, thank you so much, everyone. I think it's now time for us again to gather together for the lab. Thank you very much, everyone.